From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
A new leader takes control of Central Falls. But what is control for a city that is still under the watchful eye of the state and slowly emerging from the clutches of bankruptcy? This week on the first half of Newsmakers, the new mayor of Central Falls, James Diossa. Then, dismantling the master lever. Moderate Party leader Ken Block reveals for the first time his research on the controversial straight ticket voting tool. Does his data show there is a fundamental misunderstanding among voters about what it does? Our guest on the second half, founder of the Moderate Party, Ken Block. Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi and political reporter for Rhode Island Public Radio, Ian Donis. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Mayor, good morning and congratulations.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to be here. First time on the show, and I'm excited.
Well, we're happy to have you, and I hope we have you back in another year. And that kind of brings up the first question. A lot of people don't realize that your term is really only 9 months, essentially. You were elected under a special election, so in 9 months, you're going to have to do this all over again.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're constantly campaigning, and is that hampering your ability in any way to be the chief executive of Central Falls?
Well, I feel that, I'm going to continue to do the good work as I have as a councilman now, transitioning over to the mayor's office. So I'm pretty sure if the residents of Central Falls recognize this good work, I'll be elected again in November.
But that also comes with fundraising, does
Yes,
it not?
It does.
How is the political wallet right now? Can you sustain an election that is just 9 months away?
Right now I'm focused on, transitioning the receiver powers back into the mayor. So once I start unwinding, I'll focus on fundraising and focusing on the race in November.
Mayor, speaking of transitioning away from the receivership, the state won't lift the receivership unless the city agrees to a debt adjustment plan, and you need the city council to sign off on that plan. Some of the city councilors have been less than welcoming to you. How will you get those city councilors who are supporters of your predecessor, Charles Moreau, to agree to that debt adjustment plan?
So I've been having weekly meetings with my council president. I feel they've been very productive. We have established a line of communication, and we both have one thing in common and a goal, and it's to end the receivership as soon as possible.
What is your strategy for winning over the other councilors aside from the president, whose support you need to get rid of the receivership?
Well, I think, like I said, we all have one goal in common: end the receivership and do the good work for the city of Central Falls. As you know, it's suffered so much through the past years, and the president is conscious of that we need to get back in power and to do the good work.
Just quickly as a follow-up on that, you're having weekly meetings with the council president, but there are other members of the council.
Correct.
And as Ian pointed out, they were supporters, many of them, 3, I believe, were supporters of your predecessor.
Correct.
Have you met with them?
I met with a majority of the council, and like I said, the weekly meetings with the council president, him being the head of the council, I think it's important.
Sure, he can exact influence.
Correct.
But how did the meetings go with the other members? Are you getting the warm and fuzzies here? Or?
They know that we all need to work together, so they understand that very well.
All right.
Mayor, everyone made a big deal out of your age on the campaign trail. You're 27 years old, I
Yes.
believe, still. We had to check that on Twitter one day while we were writing a story.
Yes.
And now you're the mayor. What did you tell people on the campaign trail? I assume you talked to a lot of voters who were older than you, who maybe were skeptical, saying, "Are you old enough to take this job?" What did you tell them when you got those kinds of questions?
I told them that the city needed a new beginning, and that I was going to be there to continue the good work that I've done as a council. I fought very hard to keep the post office open, the library, when the budgets were cut for the public works. I did citywide cleanups, so they really recognized that I could lead the city and create the change that is needed and leave the past in the past. So I think I'm very humbled for the opportunity that they gave me, and I'm going to continue that good work.
People may not remember or know that way back in 2010, it was originally the council and the mayor who voted to go into receivership for Central Falls, a different process then. But you were the only vote against putting Central Falls into receivership back at that time. You were all alone on that. Why, if you put yourself way back there, long before you ever thought about being mayor, why did you look at that and say, no, I don't want to put Central Falls into receivership?
So I'm a huge believer in good government, public service, and I felt that the process in which we went through, I never saw a budget or anything like that. So, ultimately the vote reflected that, as elected officials, we need to be held accountable, and I didn't think the process of moving right into receivership was the right one at the time.
Hindsight being 2020. Do you think it was the right move now? Would you have gone back, just 2 years ago and said to you as a city councilman, you know what, you should vote to go into receivership?
Seeing it, it was a necessary thing. Mm-hmm. I think it was important to see what went wrong, and it's been very helpful today to understand what brought us to this point and how to avoid that in the future.
You've been on the job for about 2 weeks now. How has that influenced your outlook on the outlook for bringing jobs and more revenue to Central Falls?
I established these committees, advisory committees. I'm working with them hand in hand. I have an economic development, public safety, education, quality of life, arts and tourism. So I'm working very closely with them, and they'll be producing a report on recommendations for my office to follow. But there's a new energy this new year in Central Falls. People are hopeful again. We have a new police chief, fire chief, and you can see that finally the pride is coming back at the city. People are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm very successful. I'm very happy for that, and I'm going to continue that good work.
They say it's a lot easier to stage a revolution than to run a government. You are actually immersing yourself in the nitty-gritty of running a city now. How has that changed your perspective from when you were a candidate?
Well, like I said, these last 2 weeks have been a very good opportunity for me to see what's been going on with the receivership closer now that I'm in the office. And like I said, it's just knowing that we need to end this receivership right away. But we're doing it correctly in the right way. I have a good relationship with Rosemary Galogli. She knows that this has to end as well quickly.
The state revenue director.
Correct. So we're working closely with that to end it.
Mayor, you went to Washington, D.C., I read, for a reception for Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. The delegation could be enormously important in getting federal inmates back into the troubled Wyatt Detention Center, and hopefully that would restart payments to the city. If I remember right, it was $700,000 was the figure that the top figure they'd be paying in. Have you talked to the delegation about that? And if so, what did you say? And if you haven't, what are you going to say to try and get their help to make that happen?
So I'm meeting with officials from Wyatt soon to sort of get briefed, and I'm going to meet with my state delegation as well to all be on the same page. And I want to approach my federal delegation soon as well, but make sure I know all the facts and see when this Wyatt Detention Center can start producing for the city. That's much needed.
In your inaugural speech, you vowed to ensure Central Falls has the most transparent government in history. What is a transparent city hall in your mind?
I think having the residents have access to the mayor's office. We're working closely with our website to display all the information. Day one of my administration, I submit this ethics package to ensure there's no more pay-to-play politics.
Well, talk about that. What's in the ethics package?
So, pay-to-play, we need to stop that from influencing elected officials, anyone in City Hall. We also will have a sign-in sheet for all lobbyists who come into the city and try to lobby our elected officials so that residents can see who's coming into City Hall. It's ultimately to show that we're moving past what was left behind by the past administration. Show them that you can start trusting our local government, and it's an opportunity for the business community to see and trust and invest their money at City Hall.
Mayor, you're often held up as the face of the new Rhode Island as the state's demographics are changing. You're one of two, well, he's not as young as you, as he'd admit, but one younger Latino mayors in the state, along with Angel Taveras in Providence. Do you think your election's another sign that the Hispanic community is getting more politically active? Do you think maybe it's more complicated than that, since we know there's a lot of there are divisions within the Hispanic community about who they support and everything? How do you see that right now?
I think the Latino community is finally realizing that that their vote and their involvement matters. So we're seeing more of that today, and I think it was very critical in the presidential race as well. So they're finally realizing that their vote really matters, and they're going to continue to participate. And now the fact that we have 2 mayor Latinos in the state of Rhode Island is going to inspire others to get into political offices.
And are you talking to Mayor Taveras or other mayors around the state looking for advice or information?
You know, Mayor Taveras has always been a mentor of mine, you know, as soon as I started on the council. But yes, I've been talking to my neighbor mayors, Don Grebian, McKee. I spoke to Town Administrator Alman and Lombardi. They've been very, very helpful, and they allowed me to have access to them.
Where do you stand on the issue of regionalization and whether it makes sense for Central Falls to remain a city or whether it should be absorbed into part of some other community?
I believe, you know, the city of Central Falls, it can stand alone, and I believe it can stand alone, and I feel very strongly that it will. It's just unfortunate that the leadership in the past didn't make the right decisions, and this is where we are today. But this is a new beginning. I believe it can stand alone. There's 19,000 residents that feel the same way, so I'm going to work very hard to ensure that
people outside Central Falls might think you won just because people were tired of the old way of doing business, but you actually had a very sophisticated campaign aided by 2 aides of Mayor Taveras. Would you have won without that kind of a sophisticated campaign with some outside help?
You know, there was an excitement in my campaign. I had young people, you know, people from all different backgrounds. It was, like I said, a very exciting campaign. Everyone got involved, and I think you are right. People were tired of the old ways. People want to give a new chance to someone different, someone new. So I believe that this campaign reflected what the city stood at the time, which is change. They want to change.
So we can go seamlessly into the next segment. You have joined in the call to abolish the master lever, and we'll get into that in depth in the next segment. It's also known as straight ticket voting. Why did you do that? Why are you calling to ban the master lever?
I think, you know, I believe I represent the new way of politics, and I think it's time to move on from that. So. And
what about the master lever represents in your mind the old way of politics?
Well, you know, like in my race, there was about, I don't have the exact figures, but hundreds of voters who voted straight ticket and didn't vote in the mayor's race because it's nonpartisan. So there's a few votes that didn't go into the mayor's race because of that. So I think it's.
Do you think people misunderstood what the master lever was?
There is a misunderstanding of that, and I think it's just time to move on from that.
Okay, we're going to take a break now. We're going to come back in just a moment. By the way, did you get your flu shot?
I haven't yet.
Come on, Mayor. You have to get. You got to set a good example.
Where did that come from?
Well, you know, it's a big story. Going to be a leader on the flu shot.
I know.
All right. Mayor James Diossa of Central Falls, thank you for joining us. When we come back, the founder of the moderate party, Ken Block, he's done some research on the master lever, and he's going to reveal that on the second half of Newsmakers.
On the doctors.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, the panel, Rhode Island Public Radio's Ian Donis, and from WPRI.com, Ted Nisi. Our guest for the second half, the founder of the moderate party, Ken Block. And I'm sure we're going to be diving into some politics, but first we want to talk about the master lever. Indeed. Just to explain it, for the viewers out there, it's also known as straight ticket voting. As a matter of fact, there is no lever anymore when you go into the ballot, into the booth. Voters can, on the ballot, draw a line under a party. For everyone now, it's Democrat, Republican, or the moderate party, and that's it. Then it will just go right down the ballot for on the ticket for that party. You think there's a fundamental misunderstanding or confusion among voters about what it means, and to illustrate that, you combed through a lot of ballots, and I think it was in the town of Burrillville. What did you find?
That's correct. We pawed through 11,000 pieces of paper to pull out 560 master lever ballots from the 2010 elections. And what I found was personally horrifying to me, because we identified 115 master lever ballots that were for the moderate party. And my assumption would have been that every one of those 115 ballots for the moderate party would have yielded me a vote. It turns out that what I got was 18 of those votes.
Why don't we bring up the graphic here? And I want to point out the numbers that we're looking at were culled by the moderate party and not by Eyewitness News. So
actually, not by the moderate party. This was a nonpartisan effort that was not sponsored by the party in any way.
Okay.
So,
and what we're looking at here, and I want to make sure we're explaining this right. These are master lever ballots that were, someone checked off moderate party, correct?
That is correct.
And they voted separately for John Robitaille 42 times. He was a Republican candidate. Frank Caprio 35 times. You got 18. That's sort of an insult, since people checked off the moderate party. Independent Lincoln Chafee got 17, and there were 3 others that aren't on that graphic. Okay, so big deal. What does this mean?
Well, so what that tells me is that voters don't understand what the master lever mechanism is. And when you dive a little bit deeper into the data, you'll find that Chris Little, who is the moderate party attorney general candidate in that same 2010 ballot, received only 31 out of 115 votes.
Why does it illustrate that people don't know what it means? Why aren't they saying, I like the moderate party, I want the state rep in my town, or whatever it is, as a moderate, and anyone else that could possibly be a moderate? But I don't like Ken Block.
Sure. Well,
I want John Robitaille.
The trick was there were only 3 moderate candidates on that ballot. Myself for governor, Chris Little for attorney general, and a town council person. And in 60% of the master levers that were marked for the moderate party, no moderate received a vote. So we had a very interesting circumstance where 60% of the moderate party master levers yielded no moderate any vote. That is conclusive evidence to me that those voters are using that master lever area to indicate what more or less what their political philosophy is, not as much as using it as a voting mechanism. And that theme, where it's a philosophy versus a voting mechanism, carries through to a lot of the other data points that I have to discuss with you. At the end of the day, I feel very confident in saying the data that I have here shows that Rhode Island voters, out of the sample that we have here so far, clearly misunderstand what the lever is about. And when you have voter confusion, you shouldn't. And if you can make a simple change to a mechanism that is not necessary, and the vast majority of states in this country don't have the master lever, we should make that change and remove that confusion from the ballot.
You have a website up and running, masterlever.org, and there's a lot of people that have signed on to it to support,
Yes.
including the Democratic Party Chairman Ed Pacheco,
Yes.
even Mayor James Diossa here. We talked about it on the first half of the program, but there are 2 names that aren't on it: House Speaker Gordon Fox and Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed, and you sort of need their support to change this. It takes legislative action. Are you lobbying them? Have you talked to them about it?
Sure. So look, the effort to eliminate the lever has been out there for decades. And this is a special time and place here because we have a very unbalanced legislature. Social media makes possible bringing pressure to bear that was never really possible before. I mean, we have 800 emails that were sourced almost solely through social media by getting people to get involved. We haven't even hit the big mailing list yet. So we exert the pressure. We have a majority of reps in the House on the record as saying they support eliminating the lever. We'll be canvassing the Senate next week. Once we can get majorities in both houses, then we can put pressure on leadership in both chambers and say the time is here. That, on top of thousands and thousands of emails saying it's time to get rid of the lever, hopefully in combination is enough to get the job done.
What would you point to as some other examples of relatively common sense measures that could improve the political culture in Rhode Island and that might attract some broad support?
Wow. Well, there are lots. I mean, and I guess the most important one, leaving the electoral process out of it for a minute, is that what we really need to encourage all of our elected leaders to do is to make decisions based on data analysis and doing it based on evidence-based decision making. And we haven't done a lot of that. With 38 Studios is a classic example of that. The lack of an overall plan for economic development is classic. You know, you can't run something as big as an economy without having a very specific plan and approach and looking at the data and taking action on the data. And what's amazing about the master lever data is there isn't anybody, even the big supporters of keeping the lever, can't justify it, right? And I've actually had some legislators say to me, are you crazy? I'd never get rid of that because it helps me. But they don't go to Smith Hill, and they shouldn't be going to Smith Hill, to act in self-interested ways. Self-interested voting on issues kills this state.
How do you get the public to be more involved in putting more pressure on elected officials to bring about a better Rhode Island?
So, via efforts like this, sending in emails when you have the opportunity to do so. 60 Seconds sends an email through the website here. Calling your elected officials out. Send them emails, call them, leave them a message and say, I care strongly about this, that, or the other thing, and I want you to do the right thing here, here, and here. They are, the folks in the State House do pay attention when the public talks to them, but the public doesn't do enough talking to them.
I guess the question I have is, you've gotten a lot of praise for this initiative, and it does almost make intuitive sense. If so many states don't have it, why do we?
Right.
But on the other hand, what's going to change after we get rid of the master lever? Do you think it'll change election outcomes? Do you think we'll have a different governor because of it? Will we have different state reps, school committees?
The master lever doesn't affect the top of the ticket, right? Especially the governor is the top race. So the master lever doesn't have an impact there. It's the down ticket races. Mayor Diossa was absolutely correct on the undervotes for nonpartisan races. It's significant. In Boroughville, the undervote was almost 30%. 30% of master lever ballots cast across all the parties did not vote for school committee. 30%. That really disenfranchises those voters and those candidates who run. That's all by itself sufficient reason to get rid of the master lever. In a presidential election year, roughly 40,000 more Democratic master lever ballots are cast than in the gubernatorial year, right? It was about 45,000 aggregate master levers in a gubernatorial year, about 103,000 aggregate in a presidential year. Those 40,000 Democratic master levers taken across 75 legislative rep districts yields about 500 votes in every district. And you've looked at all these races. 500 votes in a presidential year, in addition, on top of into roughly 3,000 to win, that's about 16%. That's just the bump in a presidential election year. And great many candidates told me, who I was trying to get run, they said that they would not run in a presidential election year because of the disadvantage of the master lever.
In response to the push to ban the master lever, Johnston Mayor Joseph Policina told the Warwick Beacon, people raising the issue are buffoons, and said, quote, the state is financially collapsing and they're worried about the master lever. That's why 24,000 people moved out of the state. Your response?
So my response, and by the way, and Mayor Policina, who I like, also refused to go on the record for what his stance on the master lever was. So I do want to highlight that. And I
don't think it's too unclear from that
it's
quote.
right, but I think elected officials need to own their position, and I find it cowardly that he chose to speak out the way he did, and then he didn't own his position. Look, there are, and I'm a part of a great many efforts to deal with the economic issues. There's a lot of plans being presented. There are a great many things going on. This particular issue, where we have a fundamental problem with the way our ballots are being voted, needs to be fixed. This is a crisis where we have significant confusion occurring on the ballot, and we have to fix that. So, and it's simple to fix this. We already have a majority in one of the houses. We'll get a majority in the other house. We have every high statewide elected official, except for the Attorney General, on the record saying it's time to get rid of the master lever. What else do we need?
I wouldn't. You have every high-ranking official, but if you don't include Gordon Fox and Teresa Paiva, you seem like you have a pretty blinkered view of who runs this state.
You build your support from the ground up to get leadership to pay attention. So with the majority in the House now, with the email campaign happening, hopefully with the majority in the Senate, we can then, with the data that we have here, produce evidence of emails, produce evidence of the actual ballots. Here's the evidence that shows how the master lever is broken and the negative impact it has on our election process. It is time for you, in your role as a top elected official in this state, to act in the best interest of the state and remove the master lever.
You ran for governor in 2010. Are you going to run again in 2014?
I do not know. For me, I remember I started my race in February of 2010. This is very early for me to make that decision at this point. And there's a lot of work that I personally want to get done, both professionally and politically, without the complications of all the craziness that comes along with the governor's race. That's something for me to decide later on.
But it's important, is it not, for the moderate party to have a gubernatorial candidate on the ticket,
Yes,
correct? I mean,
absolutely.
What's the percentage you need to stay?
5%.
5%.
Correct.
Which you met.
6.5%.
Okay, and then some.
That's right.
So would you, let's say either you don't have a gubernatorial candidate or that person does not reach the 5%. I remember talking to you 3 years ago, and you were exhausted by the signature process that went through to get as a party, and the expense. It's a very expensive thing. A lot of people use outside firms to do that. Would you go through that again if you don't hit that 5%?
The collection of the signatures and the expense of the signatures pales in comparison to the energy expenditure and the financial expenditure involved in running for governor. So if for some reason we fail to achieve party status via the governor's race, we'll certainly go through the signature petition route again. But I feel very comfortable in saying we will have a candidate for governor. If it's me who chooses to do it, I will only do it not to get the 5%. I have no interest in running again to qualify the party. If and when I run again, it will be because I see a path to win, and I will only do so to win.
All right. Founder of the Moderate Party, Ken Block, I thank you very much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
And if you missed any of this segment, you can find it online, WPRI.com. It's under the on-air section. For Ian Donis, Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White, and we'll see you next week on Newsmakers.